misery next time on the treatment.
Today at 2:30 on 89.9 KCRW. KCRW sponsors include Bank of America, which has committed over $6.5 million to California nonprofits that strengthen local neighborhoods and provide emergency support services to vulnerable populations. Support for NPR comes from NPR stations and from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information at macfound.org.
And those prices keep going up.
Marketplace Morning Report is produced in association with the University of Southern California.
From American Public Media in Los Angeles, good morning. I'm Steve Chiatakis. Welcome to the Morning Open. A look at the economy as investors start trading for the day. They've had about 20 minutes to move the markets one way or another. So we're going to ask, where's Wall Street? The happy music. S&P up about 0.6%. The NASDAQ up 0.7%. And the Dow right now ahead by 51 points, 10,503. European markets are up right now as well, anywhere from 0.5% to 1%. Asian markets closed mixed today. The Nikkei up nearly 1%. The Hang Seng went the other way, about 1%. We've got some data today that shows while Americans are paying more for energy and food, most other prices were flat or up just a little bit. The Labor Department reports the Consumer Price Index did rise in November. Richard DeKaiser is president of Woodland Park Research. He's with us live from Washington, D.C. this morning. Hi, Richard.
Good morning.
So the headline is the cost of living rose 0.4% last month. Should we be nervous about that?
I don't think so. We've generally seen commodity prices, and in particular energy prices, climbing over the second half of this year. That was part of the November story. And, of course, that's real. People have to pay it when they go to the gas stations. But policymakers, and the Federal Reserve is meeting today, they tend to focus on these so-called core levels of inflation. They strip out the volatile commodities that go up and down so abruptly. And inflation there remains essentially where it's been for the past year. It's been running between a 1.5% and 2% pace, and that was continues to be the story based on essentially no change in November.
When do we start getting nervous?
Well, we'll start to get nervous once we start to see those core inflation metrics not stabilizing or going down, but moving up. I don't think that's in the cards for some time, and the Federal Reserve, more importantly, doesn't think it either. In their periodic missives, they've been telling us that inflation is expected to remain low because capacity utilization, and what they're really talking about there is a high unemployment rate, creates slack and hence more supply than demand in our economy. So that day will come, but I don't see it on the horizon just yet.
And you think the interest rates will be left alone when they come through today?
That's probably the most certain aspect of the Fed's meeting today. They've been keeping the so-called federal funds rate targeted between 0 and 0.25 percentage point. They will give us lots of heads up before they make any changes there, and they haven't. So that's one you can take to the bank.
I want to quickly talk about these housing start numbers for November, up 8.9%, about what was expected. What's your assessment of the market right now, the housing market?
I think we're seeing a gradual but sustainable economic recovery in the housing sector coming on. We saw a lot of bounciness in the past couple months. I think that was heavily influenced by weather, which was extremely cold and wet in October, and reverted back to more normal conditions in November. So if you read through the kind of volatility that weather can give us, we're seeing a recovery in both sales and construction activity, which has been underway since roughly March, April of this year.
All right, Richard DeKaiser from Washington. Richard, thanks.
My pleasure.
Incidentally, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke is Time Magazine's Person of the Year. The magazine says he led an effort to help save the world economy. On to the UN Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen. Leaders there trying to address the issue of global warming. Marketplace reporters are there. The latest developments, this morning, the Danish president of the conference resigned today to make way for Denmark's prime minister to give the negotiations a bigger political push. Outside the talks, things escalated as well as demonstrators tried to push through police barricades. Marketplace's Sam Eaton reports.
Protesters attempting to get inside the UN Climate Summit were beaten back with batons. They're demanding that the voices of the people most affected by climate change be heard, and they hope to take over the summit. Dave Blakeney came all the way from Canada to protest the talks.
My take is that there's a staged show of the rich countries who are really nothing but puppets from larger corporate interests. They're all wrapping themselves in green.
Police held the protesters back with tear gas, and hundreds were arrested, with world beginning to arrive today, Denmark has mounted its biggest security operation in history, with nearly a 1-to-1 ratio of police to the number of people inside the conference. In Copenhagen, I'm Sam Eaton for Marketplace.
Be sure to check out Marketplace with Kai Risdall later today. We're going to have more coverage from the UN Summit on climate change in Copenhagen.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Bank of America. 1 year into a 10-year, $1.5 trillion investment in low to moderate income communities. And is distributed by American Public Media. For information about underwriting this or other APM programs, such as Marketplace Money, visit americanpublicmedia.org.
Federal Trade Commission is suing chipmaker Intel, saying it's using its girth to extinguish competition. The suit says Intel has deprived consumers of choice and has slowed innovation in the chip industry. In Europe, regulators today dropped their antitrust case against Microsoft. That's after the company agreed to offer customers a choice of rival web browsers. Marketplace's Jeremy Hobson's with us live from our bureau in New York. He's with us now. Good morning, Jeremy.
Morning, Steve.
So how will this choice of browser work?
Well, all users in Europe who have Internet Explorer as their default browser on Windows will be sent an automatic update. It will give them a choice of whether they want to use Explorer or Safari or Firefox or a number of other browsers that many people probably have never even heard of.
And this will resolve the EU's antitrust concerns?
Yeah, the EU was concerned that because Windows is on 90% of the world's PCs and automatically installs Explorer, that users weren't being given a choice. As a result, the EU said a lot of websites are becoming compatible only with Internet Explorer, and that, they said, further reduces choice.
And what's Microsoft saying about this, Jeremy?
Well, it did avoid fines, so it's got to be happy about that. They say they're looking forward to building on the trust they now have with European officials. But I spoke with a man named William Page, who's a University of Florida law professor. He's been following Microsoft's antitrust problems, and he says this agreement really opens up a can of worms.
There are literally hundreds of applications that potentially could be installed free on Windows. Are we going to require an elaborate ballot screen for the choice of every application or applet that's shipped with the new operating system?
And Steve, he calls the agreement very far-reaching, says it's foreign to American antitrust law.
All right, Jeremy Hobson in New York. Jeremy, thanks.
Thank you.
Finally, the pizza delivery business down 6%. Domino's Pizza says it's changing its recipe. New crust, tangier sauce, even the style of cheese. A taste survey of pizza places by brand piece as Domino's came in last, tied with Chuck E. Cheese. I'm Steve Giatakis in LA. This is Marketplace Morning Report.
American Public Media.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from Sit for Less, offering all colors of the Herman Miller Aeron chair online, including Sit for Less True Black, online at sitforless.com. From the Pajamagram Company, offering holiday pajamas for women, men, and kids, delivered overnight in gift packaging at pajamagram.com. And from Ally Bank, committed to customer service with the option to reach a human being at any time at 877-24-7-ALLY by pressing 0. This is NPR.
I'm Jason Bentley, host of Morning Becomes Eclectic. Stay tuned. Later this morning, a real treat as we welcome 07 back to our studios, performing live. It's 07 on Morning Becomes Eclectic, right here on 89.9 KCRW.
Good morning, you're listening to subscriber-supported 89.9 KCRW Santa Monica, KCRI Indio Palm Springs, KCRU Oxnard Ventura, KCRY Mojave and the Antelope Valley. KCRW is NPR News and handpicked music, streaming and podcasting at kcrw.com. We're a community service of Santa Monica College. NPR News is next. It's 7 o'clock.
Good morning. Oral Roberts was a pioneering televangelist who began as a traveling faith healer. When he died yesterday at 91, he left behind an empire. It's Morning Edition from NPR News. about a deal to restore thousands of emails from the Bush administration, hailed as a win for transparency in government. This morning, we'll ask how transparent the Obama administration has been. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Renee Montaigne. Coming up, drug companies win big on the proposed health care overhaul bill. The Senate rejects a plan that would allow cheaper prescription meds to be imported from other countries. Cultivating eco-friendly habits in British schools. And it's Wednesday, December 16th, the birthday of civil rights attorney Morris Deeds. He's 73. The news is next.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Carl Castle. Leaders from around the world have begun to arrive at the climate talks in Copenhagen. Negotiators have just a few days to reach a deal. NPR's David Kestenbaum is at the talks.
The presidents and prime ministers of the world are arriving under heavy security. Most of the key negotiations take place in private, but many of the world leaders will also be giving public speeches. The speeches will be shorter than many of the leaders are accustomed to giving. They've been asked to limit their remarks to just 3 minutes. With nearly 200 countries here and each given a chance to talk, the speeches are scheduled to run today and tomorrow until after midnight. Some delegates today expressed frustration, saying they had trouble getting through security and into the main hall. It's unclear what will come out of the conference. The countries of the world remain far apart on a number of key issues. There's been little movement in their positions since the talks started. David Kestenbaum, NPR News, Copenhagen.
The House of Representatives has voted overwhelmingly in favor of a bill that would give the administration authority to punish companies that sell or ship refined oil products to Iran. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports.
One of the sponsors of the Iran Refined Petroleum Sanctions Act, Democrat Howard Berman of California, said the goal is to make it more costly for Iran to pursue a nuclear weapons program.
The Iranian nuclear issue could have been resolved without further sanctions. President Obama has offered Iran an outstretched hand, but regrettably, Iran has not unclenched its fist.
An opponent of the bill, Dennis Kucinich of Ohio, argued it could complicate diplomacy and amounts to economic warfare against the Iranian people. Republican Ron Paul also said that sanctions could unify Iranians against the U.S. The State Department has asked the Senate to make sure its version gives the president maximum flexibility. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Washington.
The Labor Department reported today that consumer prices rose last month by 0.4%. They were led mostly by higher energy costs. Most other prices remained the same, suggesting that the sluggish economy will keep inflation in check in the months ahead. The Commerce Department reported that construction of new homes rebounded in November, following a setback in October. Today's report says construction of new homes and apartments rose 8.9% in November. Applications for building permits were also up, rising 6%, a stronger showing than economists had expected. And the Commerce Department says the nation's deficit widened sharply in the July-September quarter as demand for foreign goods increased. The current account deficit rose to $108 billion, an increase of 10.3%. Time magazine has named Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke as its Person of the Year for 2009. Last year, Time named then President-elect Barack Obama as its Person of the Year. On Wall Street, prices are higher. The Dow is up by 55 points. The NASDAQ is up by 19. This is NPR News. British Airways goes to the British High Court today to get a 12-day strike by cabin crew ruled unlawful. And as Larry Miller reports from London, the strike threat has pushed the price of transatlantic tickets on other airlines sky high if you can get them.
British Airways lawyers are claiming there were a number of irregularities in the strike vote by cabin crew. These included votes counted of those no longer working for the airline, and that the timing and length of the strike was not made clear on the ballot. The strike was backed by 92% of staff. The union called on BA to negotiate, not litigate. The airline claims the strike breaches labor laws. 1 million passengers are set to fly on BA over the strike days between December 22nd and January 2nd. While BA will lose millions of dollars due to the walkout, other airlines are cashing in. The cheapest round-trip London to New York flight leaving December 19th, returning the day after Christmas, on a UK cut-price travel website is $4,700. For NPR News, I'm Larry Miller in London.
The Senate has rejected a plan to allow Americans to import low-cost prescription drugs from Canada and other countries. The amendment to the health care reform bill came from North Dakota Democrat Byron Dorgan. It failed on a 51 to 48 vote. Importing prescription drugs for personal use is a violation of federal law. Dorkin's amendment would have lifted the ban, allowing access to low-cost medicines from developed countries where the government limits drug prices. As a senator, President Obama supported drug imports, but now his administration accepts the objections of the pharmaceutical industry that it would cause safety problems. I'm Carl Castle, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from Chevy, offering 11 vehicles that get over 30 EPA estimated miles per gallon highway. Learn more at Chevy.com.
Good morning, it's 7:06 and I'm Sherry Glazer for KCRW. California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger says the world's national governments cannot fight climate change alone. The governor addressed world leaders yesterday at the UN climate talks in Copenhagen. He used the opportunity to talk about California's progress on environmental issues and said that it will take cooperation at all levels of government, industry, and science to stop global warming.
Let us regain our momentum. Let us regain our purpose. Let us regain our hope by liberating the transformative power beneath the national level. That can be the great contribution of Copenhagen.
The governor called on the UN to plan a similar climate summit for cities, states, and provinces. He's also been promoting a coalition of regional governments known as the R20, aimed at fast-tracking efforts to fight global warming. Members so far include regional leaders from Canada, Nigeria, Algeria, and France. Governor Schwarzenegger isn't the only Californian making a splash in Copenhagen. LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa is also attending the climate summit. David Freeman, head of LA's Department of Water and Power, told KCRW's Warren Olney that the mayor is spreading the word of what Los Angeles is doing to fight climate change and tap into sources of renewable energy.
The governor is giving the overview, but the hard work is done by the C40, the 40 largest cities in the world, and LA is a leader among them. We have staked out a 40% renewable goal by 2020. We are getting off of coal by 2020.
The mayor has also been highlighting the city's program to retrofit streetlights with LEDs, a move the mayor says will cut the city's greenhouse gas emissions by more than 40,000 tons a year. Hitching a ride on the proposed high-speed train to Northern California could end up lightening your wallet more than originally thought. KCRW's Vicki Cox explains.
A one-way ticket from San Francisco to Los Angeles is now expected to cost $105, up nearly twice as much from the earlier estimate last year of $55. The California High-Speed Rail Authority wants to increase private funding for the project, now estimated to cost nearly $43 billion. The state expects to complete construction on the line by 2020. The higher fare is expected to reduce ridership by about 14 million passengers a year, 41 million in 2035. Officials said the numbers could be revised again in coming years. For KCRW, I'm Vicki Cox.
And fees to adopt a pet will be reduced at all LA County animal shelters this weekend through Christmas Eve. All 6 county shelters will open at 9 a.m. Saturday to host Save a Stray for the holiday events. The goal, to get people to adopt stray animals rather than buying pets as holiday gifts. And that's KCRW News. Heading out to the roadways now, we've got a couple news signal alerts just been issued. In Castaic, North 5 past Lake Hughes, 2 right lanes are taken away due to a big rig fire. And trouble before you even get there, actually, North 5 past the 126. 3 right lanes are closed for emergency pothole repairs. So once again, this is the North 5 past the 126, and then further on up ahead, the North 5 past Lake Hughes. Our third signal has been in effect basically all morning long in the Inland Empire. The Milliken Avenue on-ramp to the westbound 10 is shut down due to police activity. Meanwhile, in Torrance, southbound 405 past Crenshaw, we've got an injury accident involving a vehicle that went over the side. Looks like we may be heading into a bit of a warming trend. Should be mostly sunny today with highs in the upper 60s, lower 70s. Similar story tomorrow with highs in the low to mid 70s. Right now in downtown Los Angeles, it's 51 degrees, 46 in Redondo Beach. You're listening to 89.9 KCRW. It's 7:10.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Renee Montagne. Democratic leaders in the Senate are heading into what they hope will be its final days of debate on a health overhaul bill. President Obama weighed in again yesterday. He invited all 60 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus to the White House to urge them to settle their lingering differences and approve the bill before Christmas.
Now let's be clear. The final bill won't include everything that everybody wants. No bill can do that. But what I told my former colleagues today is that we simply cannot allow differences over individual elements of this plan to prevent us from meeting our responsibility to solve a long-standing and urgent problem for the American people.
In a moment, we'll hear how the president is dealing with the reality of living in a more partisan Washington than he intended. First, here's NPR's Julie Rovner with the latest in those efforts to settle outstanding problems in the Senate's health bill.
The Senate overcame a nearly week-long delay last night when it defeated a pair of amendments that would have allowed individuals, pharmacies, and drug wholesalers to import lower-cost prescription drugs from other industrialized countries. The main proposal was offered by North Dakota Democrat Byron Dorgan.
I have a beef with an industry that decides they're going to overcharge the American people, in some cases 10 times more, in some cases 5, double the price that is paid in other parts of the world for the identical drug. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think we should allow it to continue.
The idea has long enjoyed bipartisan support in Congress and longtime opposition from the prescription drug industry, which worries about lost profits. It's also been uniformly opposed by whichever party is in charge of the Food and Drug Administration, which has expressed concerns about being able to keep counterfeit drugs out of the country. So it wasn't that surprising when it failed to win the 60 votes it needed to pass under a Senate agreement. What was expected to pass, though, was the amendment offered instead by New Jersey Democrat Frank Lautenberg. It would have allowed drug imports, but only if they were certified as safe by FDA officials.
As much as we want to cut costs for consumers, we cannot afford to cut corners and risk exposing Americans to drugs that are ineffective or unsafe.
Amendments like those have passed the Senate several times over the past decade, and they haven't meant much because no federal official has been willing to make such a safety certification. Dorgan called out his colleagues on just that point.
Do not vote for this amendment and go home and say you've done something about the price of prescription drugs, because your constituents will know better.
And for the first time ever, the watered-down importation amendment didn't pass either, which actually takes a hurdle out of the way. But there are still plenty left. One lingering problem is how to make liberals happy now that it appears that both a government-sponsored insurance plan and a proposal to let those not quite old enough for Medicare buy into the program will be dropped from the bill. One possibility was to require insurance companies to spend a specific amount of each premium dollar on actual medical care as opposed to administration or marketing or profits. But there's a problem with that proposal too. Over the weekend, the Congressional Budget Office effectively squashed the proposal. It said it would basically represent a government takeover of the private insurance industry. What is still being actively negotiated is a way to satisfy anti-abortion Democrats. Pennsylvania Democrat Bob Casey, who opposes abortion, is one of the lawmakers working to find compromise on the contentious issue. He says one possibility is to add language that would expand services to pregnant teenagers and young women to help them keep their babies.
It's one of those rare policy areas where you have people on both sides of the divide, and abortion are going to be very supportive of and have been. But we want more than support, we want to get them in the bill.
Assuming Democrats can get their forces together, they'll need at least 6 days for all the procedural votes to get the measure to a final conclusion. That means they pretty much have to tie things up today or tomorrow if they want to finish before Christmas. Julie Rovner, NPR News, Washington.
For a look at how individual Americans are coping with serious health care issues, NPR's Robert Koich has made a series of short videos, and you'll find them at our website, npr.org.
As we heard President Obama rally Senate Democrats yesterday, there was an unspoken message as well. The president who once stressed the importance of bipartisan support for the health care bill now knows he can't count on a single Republican vote. NPR's Don Gagnon reports.
Remember when the president delivered that big healthcare speech to a joint session of Congress just over 3 months ago? Back then, he still held out hope for something that would win over at least some Republicans.
Now is when we must bring the best ideas of both parties together and show show the American people that we can still do what we were sent here to do. Now is the time to deliver on health care.
But since then, Republican opposition has hardened. When Mr. Obama accepted his Nobel Peace Prize in Norway last week, he described himself as one who must, quote, face the world as it is. He was talking about Afghanistan. But he's been forced to face reality on the home front as well. Rutgers political scientist Ross Baker says that seeing the world as it is means nailing down 60 healthcare votes in the Senate Democratic caucus and giving up on any Republican help at all.
What happened ultimately is that his efforts succumbed to a stone wall of Republican opposition. And finally, I think that President and Senator Reid concluded that trying to get Republicans on board was a fool's errand.
Following yesterday's White House meeting, the president's tone was stern. He said Senate Democrats will come together, and even if the bill falls short of what many Democrats had pushed for, he stressed that even the scaled-down compromise represents significant change. And Mr. Obama challenged claims the opposition is making. He cited the Congressional Budget Office, which has analyzed the cost of the bill.
And in terms of deficits, because we keep on hearing these ads about how this is going to add to the deficit, the CBO has said that this is a deficit reduction, not a deficit increase. So all the scare tactics out there, all the ads that are out there are simply inaccurate.
And he went on.
You know, a lot of the critics of this entire process fail to note what happens if nothing gets done. And the American people have to be very clear about this. If we don't get this done, your premiums are guaranteed to go up.
Health insurance is just one item on a longer list of issues where Republican votes have been near impossible to come by for the president. That includes his entire economic agenda, including the stimulus package. John Cranford, a senior editor at Congressional Quarterly, says Republicans have made a political decision to unify in opposition to Mr. Obama in hopes that the public sides with them.
But you've only got 40 Republicans in the Senate, and so it'll be easier for them to stick together more. And this is a highly partisan Congress over the last 12, 14 years. It has just proved to be as partisan as we've seen in a century. I think probably in the late 1800s, we had a Congress that was equally partisan and polarized.
On Capitol Hill yesterday, Republicans said that Democrats need to share the blame for any polarization. But Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas also stressed that his party has gotten behind the president on Afghanistan.
I dare say there's probably more support for the president's policy in Afghanistan on the Republican side than there is on the Democratic side. But I think it does demonstrate where we agree that with the policy that we'll work together with the president.
But domestic issues have been a very different story. The divisions are deep. The White House insists it has not given up on bipartisanship. But for now, it has shifted its focus to holding its own side of the divide together. Don Gungay, NPR News, Washington.
Good morning, it's 7:19. I'm Cherry Glazer, and you're listening to Morning Edition on 89.9 KCRW.
KCRW sponsors include Sony Classical and Yo-Yo Ma, 30 years outside the box. A limited edition 90 CD box set of Yo-Yo Ma's recorded legacy includes a 312-page hardbound book available at Amazon.com.
Still ahead on Morning Edition, in Britain, children are driving much of the environmental agenda, forcing their parents to watch the family's carbon footprint. But how big an impact does this really have? And some analysts think the U.S. could be heading into a new Cold War, this time with Iran.
Support for KCRW comes from Kidspace Children's Museum, located in Pasadena near the Rose Bowl. From December 26th through 28th, Kidspace presents Snow Days, a winter festival for kids and families. Guests will delight in real snow blanketing the museum's courtyard. Kids can also paint with ice, make mini edible snowmen, learn how snow is formed, and much more. Free parking is always available in Rose Bowl Lot I. More information at kidspacemuseum.org.